The third critical choice I made was to build trust. For me, that began with needing to build trust in myself. And then that evolved to inspiring the trust of others. Well, I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask you anyways, and then ask you to share if you want to share an example. But has there been a time in which you had to build trust in yourself? And then how did you do it?
Every single day. I actually talk a lot to my teams in the companies that I've run about imposter syndrome. And that's where I would place this is that feeling of like, what the hell am I doing? Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I think it's something that you start to realize that the trust is that everything is going to be okay. And that there's as much risk in not taking risk as there is in taking risk. Like, it's all risk ultimately. So I could have taken the risk of just staying in a career that I loved, science writing, and not gone into entrepreneurship. And I probably would have been fine taking that risk, but it still was a risk that I was going to have to make, and I was going to have to trust that decision. But when you're second guessing yourself constantly, it's like you lose the enjoyment of life. And so what I've told people, I've learned in all of this is you never actually feel comfortable. And as soon as you do, you're probably ready to do something new. It's that discomfort that drives your career forward, drives your life forward. It helps you to grow as an individual. And you want to always feel that little bit of discomfort. I heard a speaker once who talked about it, stress, as eustress, which is positive stress, is the going up the hill of the roller coaster and the exhilarated feeling of anticipating the downhill. And that distress is when you're in crisis. So distress is a sign that something needs to change, but eustress, that feeling of like public speaking for some people, having to get up in front of a crowd, like that kind of a stress can actually be a very productive stress that pushes you forward. And so you're always looking for that exhilarating stress. And part of that is that you're going to feel like you don't know what you're doing because you don't, because you're doing things that it's the first time you're doing them. It's a good thing. And I think probably what helped me more than anything in this is having good mentors around me and finding them. Like, they don't just come to you. I mean, what's the old saying that the teacher appears when the student is ready?
Yes.
You have to make yourself ready to have that person give you the kick that you need to take the risk. And I found really female, largely, mentors along the way, some really good male mentors as well. But the women in it were the ones that I could really relate to, and who would say to me, like, what's the harm? Like, give it a shot. So you fail. What's the big deal? Like, just put yourself out there and do it.
Yeah.
Even getting my MBA, I remember calling the program, and there was a woman there, Irene Hurst, who I spoke with, and I was thinking it was going to take me a year and a half because I was going to have to go back and do the GRE and all these other things. And she says, no. We have an executive MBA program, and it starts this fall. Well, this was July, and this fall was August. And I'm like, well, I don't have time to take the GRE and all of that. Like, I'm like panicking, like, oh my God, like in a month, like, I don't know if I can do this. I thought I had a long time to think about it. And she's like, you don't have to do that. You just have to commit. And if you want this, I'll put you on the board. They're constantly seeking experienced female executives. I think that they would accept you into the program. And so she put my name in the hat, and within about 60 days, I was working on my MBA. But without another woman sitting there on the phone saying, "No, you can do this. You're a great fit for this," I wouldn't have had that ability to get over that panic, because that's what it feels like. It's like panic. I've got to trust that this is the right thing to do. But you need that person that will tell you, yes, this is the right thing to do. So I've been very blessed to have that. But I always seek that when I'm uncertain. I'll reach out to a good friend or a mentor.
And how, I'm going to flip the question a little bit, especially as you are an executive leading so many people. How do people inspire your trust?
Yeah. I think the thing that inspires my trust is probably a combination of curiosity and courage. So if I see someone who's really curious about something, and they're asking a lot of questions about it, and they're exploring it on their own, they're feeling it out, whether it's a younger executive that wants, or a younger employee that wants to move up in leadership and get into more executive level leadership, Or if it's, even my daughter, when she's asking about something and I know she's serious about it, if she's curious enough and she seems to have courage about it, it's like, sure, let's try that. Let's see how that goes. But I think you have to have that combination. I've tried to mentor people before that are lacking one or the other. And if they're not curious, what they're doing is they're waiting for you to write a prescription for them. And that's not really how it works. Like, you have to be seeking your own prescription. And if they don't have courage, they're writing their own prescription, but then they're too afraid to do it. And what you get is a lot of excuses about why it's not the right time. That could have been me with my MBA. I was so tempted to say, thank you, Irene. I'll do it next year. Like, let's do it next year.
That's the easiest, right? That would have been the easiest.
Buy myself some time. But what she was saying is, hey, there's no time like now. The opportunity is there. Why wait another year? And she's putting that courage into me and taking that leap. And my husband believing in me, having the faith that, like, yeah, I'm going to go spend a lot of money to get an MBA as a gamble that may or may not pay off career wise. And fortunately it did. But you have to have that sort of curiosity and courage. And I think he saw that in me and said, you're not going to fail. If you've got that, go for it. So got to find that in yourself.
I can't wait just to take even this little chapter and this little clip and share it with some of the teams that I work with and coach. I love your curiosity and courage. And some of the conversations end up being, are those innate characteristics that I'm born with, or are those things that I can, are those skills and behaviors that I can create and hone and et cetera? And, some people fall on one side or the other in their belief. I kind of think that you can skill up to it. You can enhance those behaviors. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Never, when you're trying to mentor someone in the same way that when people mentored me, the best mentors that I've had are people that are they're not answering the questions for me. They're just keeping me focused on the questions. They're keeping me focused there and driving me there to help me figure out the answers to those questions and to take the next steps. And I've tried to do that for people, and you try to do it without judgment. And sometimes in the back of your mind, you're thinking, oh, this person's never going to do it. They're never going to do it. Sometimes you're right, because you can hear in the way that they talk about themselves or they talk about the problem that there's almost a despair in it. Like they feel like, oh God, I've tried and I failed and I'm old. Like, that's a big thing with women. We think we're old. Like, by the age 28, we think we're too old to do everything. And it's like, I can tell you, knowing what I know now, if I wanted to go back and get my MBA now, I'd go back.
You could.
I was 40 when I graduated, and I was not the youngest person in that class or the oldest person in that class. So it's one where it's interesting. We all have this mindset, but you see how they think and how they talk, and you think, oh, this person's never going to do it. But I've had a few surprise me, because I've talked to people about my story about going back to get my MBA. And there's a moment in executive growth where you can get there without the degree, but it's a big barrier. And so oftentimes you get to that moment in your career and you have to make that decision to go back and scale up your education to be able to get you into the seat. And I've had this conversation with a number of executives who've come and asked me, do you think it's worth it for me? Do you think I'll ever make it to the C-suite without it? And I'll tell them, I don't know the answer to that. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. But I've seen quite a few of them actually make the leap and go back and do it. And there's one in particular that surprised the heck out of me that she did it. So in the conversations that I had with her, I thought, she feels too beaten down. She's not going to, that courage that has to be the fire inside you. It's like she was holding that little flame, and you could just feel that it's like, I don't want to let it get blown out and fail. But then I follow her career and saw that she went back, started an MBA, finished her MBA, and now is working as a vice president of a company. And just watching her career and seeing what she did, it's inspiring to me, because you know that you feel like maybe I made a difference on that journey. She thanked me, so I hope I made a difference on that journey. But ultimately, it was her courage that got her where she is. And I think that's the part where, yeah, I do think people can,
awesome.
But it has to come from inside you. No one's going to pull you up. And if your narrative is that you've been pushed down, get rid of that narrative. There's 1,000 million opportunities out there. So if the opportunity you're in is pushing you down, start looking for other opportunities. There's going to be one that the path is open and you can pull yourself up, but you have to be really committed to it.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Choose and Become interview series. To check out more episodes, go to www.trishkendall.com/podcast, or go to any of your favorite podcast channels, including YouTube, under Trish Kendall Speaks, and you'll find this interview and more. Choose and become.